I see the born of no return. Sister, hey now, can't you see we're rushing for the end? I see the point of no return. Now see the point of no return. It's just ahead.
Well, good evening. It's Monday, April 21st, 2014. My name is Gary Hendershot, and for the next hour, I'm going to be barking at the moon. You're listening, by the way, to the Wide Awake news presentation, broadcast live exclusively on the Rents radio network. Frankly, if you're listening to this program or one of the many other offerings by Rents Radio, might not be a bad idea to cruise over to www.rents.com and show the network a little love. Couldn't wait. I mean, frankly, if you benefit from this type of programming, couldn't hurt to show those who produce it that you appreciate their efforts and throw a few coins in the hat. Unlike the major corporate media, I'm sure you're well aware that the alternative media doesn't have those big fat advertising checks and government subsidies, and frankly, we're kind of counting on you to help keep the lights burning. Enough on that topic. I think last week, probably the biggest news item in alternative press was probably this land grab, cattle rustling nonsense that was carried on by the Bureau of Land Management. Now, for at least the time being, that issue seems to have settled down. You know, a lot of folks watching this are really just kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop. You know, there's apparently a group of volunteers who are taking up stations around the Bundy Ranch in southern Nevada, expecting another armed incursion by federales at almost any time. And given their history, it's not hard to imagine that happening. But, you know, one thing that did become very clear after last week is that what used to be the alternative media, where people went to hear an opposing point of view, has indeed become the real media. Do you really think CNN would have put a truck out in the middle of the desert to broadcast what was going on out there if the alternative media had not dragged them there, kicking and screaming, embarrassing them for their lack of coverage of a very important event to average people? Makes you think back what might have happened in Waco, what might have happened at Ruby Ridge had there been an internet and had there been a concerned alternative media willing to get out there and get you the news, come hell or high water. Something to think about. One of the other things that kind of became obvious as the story about this land grab developed is that, you know, a central character in all this is Senate Majority Leader Harry, expletive deleted, Reid. Now, this fella seems to have been arranging, along with his son, some sweetheart deals with some Chinese fellers to make use of this land other than desert tortoises and Bundy's cattle. And it seemed that it just wasn't quite, shall we say, kosher, what Reid and his family was doing in the background. But now, Harry Reid is a lawmaker, okay? He has been elected to the Senate to pass laws. In theory, laws that we will all abide by. Problem is, once fellows like Harry Reid get in, they start passing laws that are beneficial to interests that can benefit them and their family members. And we've seen so many examples of this over the years, it's absurd. So when Harry Reid gets on Nevada television and calls the Bundys and their supporters vicious lawbreakers and drops the T word, calls them terrorists, domestic terrorists, you got to kind of pay attention. Because, see, in this post-9/11 world, when you brand somebody a terrorist, that has significant meaning, okay? Terrorists all the time are getting Hellfire missiles shot up their butts in places like Yemen. As a matter of fact, I understand it's happening today. I understand, our military blew up, 50 civilians or terrorists in Yemen just today. So when somebody like Harry Reid gets on the media and refers to the supporters of Bundy as terrorists, you'd best pay attention. So we got this guy who's making backroom deals, whose former aide is now in charge of the Bureau of Land Management and sees fit to send 200 armed paramilitary troops to rustle this guy Bundy's cattle off of what they claim as federal land, what most folks in Nevada consider public lands, but the distinction is not clear to many, but there is a distinction. When people gather around this man Bundy and support him in his hour of need and protest this armed incursion by what could clearly be called domestic terrorists, these protesters themselves are branded domestic terrorists. Okay? This is doublethink right out of 1984. Okay? They have made the word terrorist create a picture in your mind. When I say the word terrorist, what do you think? You think about some guy with a beard and a satellite phone and a laptop living in a cave in Afghanistan, right? You don't think about a cowboy on a horse herding cattle. But Harry Reid wants you to get Hopalong Cassidy's picture in your mind when he says terrorist. And when a bunch of civilians get together, and you damn right they were armed, they had good reason to be armed. They were facing an armed opponent with superior firepower. But when they gather together to face down against this paramilitary force, they're referred to as terrorists? Harry Reid. Is that the best you've got to offer, Nevada? Can't you come up with a senator better than that? More in the news on our friend Harry Reid. An indicted businessman, a fellow by the name of Jeremy Johnson, was allegedly a Utah businessman, is rocking both state and national politics after claiming Utah Attorney General John Swallow helped him broker a deal with Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid to make a federal investigation into his company quietly disappear. The Salt Lake Tribune reports Jeremy Johnson was allegedly told that the price would be $600,000 and claims to have made an initial payment of $250,000 when he was slapped with a federal lawsuit. Now he says he wants his money back. He gave Harry Reid $250,000 to make this indictment go away. Harry Reid didn't come through. Well, he wants his money back, damn it. I don't blame him. I mean, if you got the best government money can buy, they had best deliver when they get the money. And according to this fella, Harry Reid didn't deliver. So, Harry, you snake in the grass, give the man his $250,000 back if you're not going to take the bribe and do the deed. I mean, for crying out loud, what's this world coming to when you bribe a politician and he doesn't come through as promised? More on this Bureau of Land Management land grab. This out of Oklahoma, KFOR out of Oklahoma. Over time, officials say the fees, they kept raising the darn fees. Organizers with the Oklahoma militia say they have members in Nevada who claim Bundy's cattle were unlawfully herded by the Bureau. Oklahoma militia says it's made up of nearly 50,000 volunteers. Members say they are taking Bundy's side and fear this practice of the BLM, could spread to Oklahoma if they don't stop it in Nevada. Now, folks who belong to militias all over the Southwest have sent representation to Bundy's ranch to try to make their presence known. Evidently, in America, we don't actually own the property anymore, if you ever did. Shaw says Oklahoma militia members are ready to take up arms against the federal government if needed. He said, it's really up to the feds. The ball is in their court. You can do this legally, or if you want to try a land grab violently, you can do that. But we're going to resist you. Now, this is characteristic of many who have just flat decided they are not going to take it anymore. Remember that classic movie? I'm mad as hell, and I'm not going to take it anymore. Well, these people have been taking it on the chin, taking it on the chin. They've been backed into a corner. And at this point, they got no place left to back into. And they're going to fight. They're going to fight. If push comes to shove, they will resist with force of arms, if necessary. Nobody wants it. Nobody's looking for it. Nobody wants to be the one to pull the trigger first. But if you're faced with armed insurgents on your land, what choice do you have but to face them armed? You think if you go out there and ask them politely to leave, they're gonna? You think if you call the sheriff or you call the local constabulary, you think that they're going to get chased off? Yeah, good luck with that. More on the land grab. The Diamond Bar Ranch in New Mexico has been seized by U.S. Forest Service. This is in southwest New Mexico. Now they say the cattle, they've rustled all this guy's cattle. Now they say the cattle can be redeemed if he pays $40,000 rustling fee. Basically, they're holding this guy's cattle hostage. They've rustled all his cattle, and they're holding him hostage. They said they'll give him his 80 cattle back if he pays them $40,000. Originally, the Laney property was just 115 acres, surrounded by 144,000 acres of public lands for which Mr. Laney paid grazing rights. But after a study, U.S. Fish and Wildlife decided that the lands could not sustain his 1,100 herd of cattle. The Forest Service reduced his cattle herd to a meager 300. Well, the guy can't make a living on 300 head of cattle, okay? He's not doing this as a hobby. He is raising cattle as hamburger on the hoof, okay? This guy has to make a profit. It's how he pays his bills. It's how he supports his family. And if you think it's an easy job, try it for a week. These guys bust their ass. They work hard to put food on your table. And they're being run out of business by a government that has other plans for that land. Now, this grazing on public lands is a tradition in the United States that goes back to the 1800s. This is nothing new. Frankly, it is how the government subsidizes the production of food in the United States. All right, now in some countries, they import a lot of food and the government just pays for a portion of it, as a government subsidy so that nobody gets whacked in the back of the head with a 2x4 over the cost of food. In the United States, the government has vast tracts of land that are not suitable for much else other than grazing cattle. So these cattlemen, for over 100 years, have paid a very modest fee for the use of these public lands so that they can raise their cattle on an economic basis, sell them to McDonald's, and you get your Happy Meal, okay? That's how it's worked for 100 years. You chase all these ranchers off of these public lands. Do you have any idea what that's going to do to the price of your Big Mac? Nobody thinks about these things. You think that this is a Nevada problem, that this is a New Mexico problem, that it's not your problem because you live in Chicago or you live in Atlanta. What does that mean to me? Well, I'll tell you what it means to you. Every time you go buy yourself a burger, every time you ante up for that real nice steak at the swanky restaurant, if not for the government subsidy of letting these ranchers graze the cattle on the public lands, that steak or that burger would be much, much more expensive. That's how it's going to impact you. First of all, there will be less food if the government has its way, and what little food there is will be significantly more expensive. If you've never read up on this phenomena called Agenda 21, you owe it to yourself to do a little bit of research on that topic. Because even though our federal government says that is all a big conspiracy theory, we wouldn't be involved in anything like that. Their actions speak louder than their words. This is all stuff that comes right out of Agenda 21. If you haven't read up on it, you should. You should become acquainted with United Nations Agenda 21 and consider what impact it might have on you. And as always, make up your own damn mind. Here's more. Bureau of Land Management is after 90,000 acres in Texas. I mean, if you think this is limited to that little chunk of territory right there in southern Nevada with this guy Bundy on it, no. It's happening all over the country. There are all sorts of examples. You do not have to look far to find examples of this going on all over the country. It's not being reported in the mainstream news. About the only place you're going to hear about this type of thing is in alternative media. And if you don't think it has any effect on you because you wear a suit and tie every day and work in an office building, you don't ride a horse and wrestle cattle, you had best think again. This issue will impact all of us. And thank God, there are people drawing a line in the sand in southern Nevada. There's plenty of room for more lines in the sand in other parts of the country. Minnesota, Texas. It's a big topic. It's one you need to look into hard. Don't make any quick decisions, but look at it, consider. You got it. Make up your own mind. And yes, I was afraid I had missed my musical cue, but I hear it now in the background playing gently. I've got to slip out of here for a couple minutes while the studio sells some product. Stay tuned, though. We'll be back with a little bit more Wide Awake news right after these messages. Okay, and we're back from our break. I went a little longer on my my little tirade about the government land grabs than I had wanted to. But, you know, that topic is not over, okay? I don't think the Bundy Ranch episode is really over yet, and most who are looking at this kind of agree. You know, we're all kind of nodding our heads saying, you know, as soon as we turn our backs, as soon as all those volunteers have to go back home, take care of their own lives, because, you know, all these fellas, you know, they got wives, they got kids, they got jobs, they got obligations, you know. They can't draw a government paycheck to carry a gun and guard Bundy and his property the way these federales get a government paycheck out of your tax largesse to carry on the assault. So eventually those fellows are going to have to go back to their lives. They don't have any choice. And as soon as they do, yeah, you got it. It's bullshit. But what are you gonna say? What are you gonna do? You know? I just have a funny feeling, you know, that there is another Waco-style incident just down the road a little piece, you know. And these boys, they see the federales, they can wait them out. They can outlast them. You know, they're under siege right now. They can wait them out. Keep an eye on that one. See how it goes. Are you about pissed off about that yet? Why not? Moving right along. You know, there are other things in the news, and I tell you, it's been a while since I have had a segment specific to one of my favorite topics, how I just dearly love Obamacare. But yeah, just yesterday there was an article released at Breitbart.com. A pretty good article. The links, by the way, will be at, you know, if you go to smartscarecrow.com and you find the blog entry for April 21st, 2014, find the blog entry. You can find links to all the articles on all the items that I'm covering tonight. They'll also be included in the About section on YouTube if you happen to be watching the video portion of this presentation on YouTube. But moving right along, this out of California. California Obamacare enrollees are struggling to find doctors who will accept their newly purchased health insurance plans. How about that? So you got yourself all signed up for your Obamacare. You're paying the money. Now you actually need some health care, and the doctors don't want to be involved in it. You know, it would be funny if it wasn't so damn tragic. But bottom line is Obamacare never really had anything to do with health care. This is all about how we're going to get some more revenue. And if we've got time before the end of tonight's broadcast, I got a killer on the revenue side too. CBS San Francisco says that many of the healthcare clinics for low-income individuals that helped people enroll in Obamacare are now seeing those same people coming back to the clinic begging for help. They're coming back to us now saying, I can't find a doctor. California single mother experienced the pain of Obamacare networks when she realized that her $200 a month Obamacare plan is not accepted by many of the doctors in her area. Yeah, I signed it. I got it. But where's my doctor? Who's my doctor? I don't know. I love Obamacare. I just love Obamacare. And I tell you, I think the pain on the other side is starting to show up too. Democratic congressman on Obamacare. The worst is yet to come. It's going to hit the fan. Massachusetts Representative Stephen Lynch isn't just worried about the negative impact Obamacare will have on his party's performance this fall. He also thinks its worst effect on our health care system are still to come. Lynch, who voted against the Affordable Care Act in 2010, warned that the situation is going to hit the fan when the law's delayed provisions go into effect down the road. There are parts of Obamacare, or the Affordable Care Act, that were postponed because they are unpalatable. That means if you told folks right up front what you were going to do to them, they would lynch you. So they kind of delayed those portions of it for a little while. They're going to let somebody else get elected into the office and let them take the heat for these unpalatable provisions of Obamacare. The Cadillac tax. Now this, for a lot of you, middle income types out there, you guys who actually, even in this tough economy are managing to make a few bucks. The Cadillac tax that goes into effect in a few years and taxes employer health plans over a certain value. I mean, basically, if you got one of these plans that's, the real, sweetheart deal where you basically pay nothing and get, top quality care, the kind of plan that somebody like a Dick Cheney would have, where, you go to the head of the list when you need a heart transplant and, they might actually go out and kill somebody to get, no, they wouldn't do that. They wouldn't kill somebody to get Dick Cheney a heart, would they? Hard to say. But, these Cadillac plans, these employer-paid plans that are really sweetheart deals. Now, this is part of your compensation plan. If you are an executive-type employee, you have negotiated a compensation plan with your employer. This is a negotiated deal. It's kind of like that ball player that negotiated $200 million over the next 10 years. I mean, that's the deal he was able to negotiate. Two guys sat down. They dickered back and forth. They came out with a deal that was agreeable to both of them. They signed on the dotted line. It's business, right? Wrong. According to Obamacare, that Cadillac plan has to be taxed over and above the income tax value because you got a better plan than what other folks get. Therefore, by definition, you need to pay an extra tax just for having access to that plan. Repeal is now impossible, he says, because of the number of Americans who signed up for the exchange. Actually, there's not that many that have signed up. Out of roughly, I don't know, there's only 85 million people in the United States who are employed. There are 85 million people in the United States who are carrying the load for everybody. Okay? Of those 85 million wage earners, the people who actually make a living, the rest of them, are dependents at some level or another. But of those 85 million who actually make a living, only 7 million have signed up so far for Obamacare. So, I'm sorry. If there's a better plan, I'd sure like to see it. We will lose seats in the House, he said. And now he's whining and crying, saying, oh, Democrats are going to lose the Houses because of Obamacare. Oh, they're going to vote. You damn right we're going to vote you out. What were you thinking, you idiot? I love Obamacare, don't you? Thank you, Obama, for all the great things you have done for this nation. I need to take my blood pressure medication tonight. Excuse me just a moment. Big gulp of coffee. Yeah, I needed that. Yeah, I know. I'm I'm a little more animated tonight than you. Some of this stuff in the news is just, if it wasn't real, it could be a comedy. This could be a sitcom. But this stuff is for real. This stuff is actually happening. I'm starting to hear the music in the background. And I need to take a deep breath anyway, because I got my blood pressure all up in my Obamacare segment. So please, do stand by. We got one more segment of Wide Awake News as soon as they're finished selling a little product here at studio. Take care now. Alrighty, we are back from that break. I hope everybody out there bought at least one of everything that was advertised. Show those advertisers a little bit of love too. The economy is hard. Things are tough out there, and everybody realizes that folks are struggling. Everything's going up, but you still need to consider that all-important vote, the one that still counts. Vote with your dollar. These days with Diebold machines and elections becoming more and more suspicious. How did that guy get in? I voted for none of the above, but we elected a what? That vote with your dollar does still seem to count. So, exercise that vote with your dollar carefully. Moving on to yet another one of my favorite topics, drones and the United States government and their penchant for blowing up brown people at will anywhere in the world. All we got to do is label them a terrorist, and they all of a sudden have a target painted on their back. And if you just happen to be in the nearby vicinity when the Hellfire missile goes zooming up that terrorist's behind, well, you just unfortunate collateral damage, or you might have been a fellow traveler or whatever. You must have been in some way hooked up with him. If you were near him when we blew him up, you must have been guilty of something, or we wouldn't have blowed up. We wouldn't have blowed you up, honest. Well, Civil Liberties Union has for a long time been after the administration to, explain what their justification is for doing this stuff, because on the face of it, it just seems absolutely absurd that the United States of America would have the audacity to invade the airspace of a sovereign nation with an armed, unmanned vehicle, discharge a weapon within that sovereign nation, and blow somebody up who may indeed have committed no crime in that sovereign nation, as if the foreign territory and government involved just had nothing to say about it. I mean, frankly, that takes some giant brass ones, I was talking to a customer of mine earlier today, and he was all right, blew up 50 of them there Yemeni terrorists. I looked at him, I said, well, listen, suppose you was sitting on a park bench reading the Wall Street Journal, and you had Pablo Escobar's second cousin sitting next to you. You don't even know this guy. He just came up and sat down and started feeding the pigeons while you're reading the Wall Street Journal. And Nicaragua decided out of the blue that they didn't like this guy. Flew a drone of theirs into sovereign U.S. airspace, sent a Hellfire missile up old Pablo's behind, and you just happened to be collateral damage. Oh, well, they better not invade U.S. territory. We'll kick their ass. I'm sorry, my head almost explodes when people act that way. I can't take it. We are either governed as a nation of law or not. If not, then we are by definition a rogue nation, a terrorist nation, raining terror from the skies on otherwise innocent human beings. Well, the Civil Liberties Union, out of absolute amazement, wanted to hear the administration's justification, their legal justification for how they can do this with impunity. Well, finally, for the first time, a federal appeals court has ordered the government to release a critical legal memo relating to U.S. targeted killing operations, reversing a lower court decision that upheld the government's secrecy claims despite characterizing them as the stuff of Alice in Wonderland. The American Civil Liberties Union's Freedom of Information Act lawsuit demands that the CIA and the Department of Justice and Defense disclose records about the deaths of 3 U.S. citizens killed in Yemen in 2011, specifically this guy Alawaki, his 16-year-old son, and Samir Khan, in addition to ordering the release of legal memo from the Justice Department. Bottom line is, right now, the government's on the defensive. They may actually have to disclose in public what their legal argument is, okay? The reason we can just, with impunity, fly a drone into Yemen, Pakistan, or wherever we choose, anywhere in the world, and run a Hellfire missile up somebody's butt is because... Okay, we've never been given that explanation. It's all been smoke and mirrors. Oh, they're terrorists. They were terrorists. They were terrorists. All they got to do is paint this picture in your mind of Hopalong Cassidy, the terrorist, you know, or Ahab the Arab. You know, they got to get this picture in your mind of this evil guy with a beard. He's got a satellite phone and a laptop. He lives in a cave in Tora Bora. Oh, and he's evil. He's out to get you. He's going to get you. You better check under your bed every night because he's hiding under there. Be very afraid. Be very afraid. Only the U.S. and all of its drones can protect you. We've never heard their legal justification. Now, I'm not a big fan of the American Civil Liberties Union. More times than not, they've been, shall we say, questionable in their political positions. But this time around, you know, I think Americans are mature enough to hear the government's legal argument for how they justify this insanity. Maybe, just maybe, if the CIA, the Justice Department, and the military decide to abide by the court ruling. See, that's the other problem we have, is for some reason, you know, the courts come down with a ruling and the CIA, the government, and other federal agencies just, you know, ignore it. Keep an eye on that one. As always, make up your own damn mind. Yeah, I wanted to get to this one, psychological exam for this TV personality, but I'm looking at the time. Maybe I'll go ahead and push that one to last because, you know, we did just get through tax day. April 15th was last week. And I know all of you good Americans out there who, you know, are the backbone of the nation and pay for all of this nonsense. I know you you wrote Uncle Sugar his check, and you signed your paperwork, declaring that everything you said was true, and you subject to perjury if you lied to them, if they can find you were off by a penny somewhere, But yeah, last week was April 15th, tax day. Gotta love it. Did you know? Did you know that tax revenues for 2014 hit an all-time high? Yeah. There are less of us paying by a long shot. Let me repeat that. Those paying taxes in 2014, the number of us paying taxes in 2014 is down almost 15% since 2008. But the amount of money acquired through taxation is at an all-time high. Now, I ask you, those of you out there who, even in these hard times are still, by the grace of God, managing to make a little bit, can you feel it? Can you feel that giant sucking sound on your hip pocket where you keep your wallet? Because you betcha. At the close of business on April 15th, according to the daily Treasury statement, the Treasury had taken in $1.5 trillion in total taxes so far this fiscal year. In contrast, $79 billion more than last year. Prior to this year, the highest federal tax intake by tax day occurred in 2008. So even though there are less of us paying taxes today than in 2008, their take was bigger than in 2008. Despite the record rate of revenue collection so far in this fiscal year, the Treasury reported in its monthly statement for March that through that month the government had already amassed a deficit of $413 billion for fiscal 2014. So even though they made the biggest haul in history, it still wasn't enough. So, hey, you Mr. Taxpaying American, Uncle Sugar knows you're hurting, but he needs just a little bit more. Just a little bit, It's like the camel getting its nose under the tent, Just a little bit, Just, and yeah. Yeah, I'll call you. Yeah, honest, I'll call you. Oh, and certainly I respect you. Oh, no question about it. Yeah, baby. Little note from history. In the 3rd century A.D., Emperor Caracalla, I don't know, I can't pronounce the guy's name, famously remarked of Rome's tax policy, "For as long as we have this," holding up his sword, "for as long as we have this, we shall not run out of money." Sound familiar? All right, I'm hearing the music in the background. That's it for me. I gotta get out of here. I'm done barking at the moon for this week. I'll see you again next Monday. Good night, all.
None of us are leaving here alive. calling out to you. Won't you turn, won't you turn?